Where's Fielder?
He's gone to the dogs.
Welcome, folks. Steve Fielder here, coming at you one more time with the Gone to the Dogs podcast. Dog talk at its finest. And as you listen to this podcast each week, you'll hear me mention a name. I always try to mention my buddy Big Mark Zepp and mention Zepp Predator Calls and what a great supporter of this podcast Mark has been. Well, today I've been able to lasso the big guy, get him out of the woods. He's chasing red bones around through those northern Hoosier woods these days. Plus, he's got a few other hats that we'll talk about. But I'm just really, really excited today, and a little bit sad too. It's a little bittersweet because I have Mark on the program, Mark Zepp, of course. And we're going to be talking about his longtime friend, former employer, hunting buddy, all of the above. Probably the biggest name to ever be known across the coon hunting world, and that is that of John Wick. We lost John here about a week ago prior to my recording this, and I wanted to get Mark on the program this week because nobody really spent more time in the coon hunting world. Maybe John's friend John Ross there from Pennsylvania, maybe, but anyway, Mark Zepp and John Wick traveled together across the country with Wick Outdoor Works, and I'm just really excited to have Mark Zepp on the program today. How you doing, Big Mark?
I am wonderful, Steve. It's always good to hear your voice. Always good to talk to you. I wish we were talking under better circumstances, but we can, our sport and really our whole community lost a great man last week for sure.
Well, absolutely. And, I confessed to you here before we started recording that despite the fact of having done well over 300 of these podcasts now, it's hard for me to believe, I'm a little bit nervous on this one because, I'm not just talking about a guy that I met at a hunt. We're talking about a guy that probably made the greatest impact on the sport of coon hunting that's ever been made.
He was Elvis.
That is right.
Without the flamboyant personality, he was the king, and it's in a little bit of ironies, Steve. I met John the same day I met you in Sedalia, Missouri at American Redbone Days. Oh, probably, I want to say it was 88, 89.
That sounds about
like
right,
that.
Mark.
Yeah. And I had responded. I was out of college a year or two, and Wick Outdoor Works had just built a new building, and it was the May issue of Coonhound Bloodlines, and there was a half-page ad in there for help wanted, and I just knew that I knew that was my future, and kids. A lot of kids will grow up and they will emulate, Troy Aikman or whoever their heroes were. And mine was John. So it was. I had written him a few letters, and he'd said, "Hey, why don't you come on out?" And he and one or two other guys from Wick Outdoor Works were there selling some supplies and some chaps. And of course, back then, Wick's was well known, but all of their products as far as the bibs. A lot of those things were just new to the sport, new to the industry. And so I drove out there to meet him to see if we could move forward, and it was very nice. If memory has it right, I talked to him there, and then went back to Montgomery City. I met Linda and Monica and several of the people at Wick Outdoor Works, and went home, and then I would come back later, a month later, and we would chat again. But yeah, that was those were great times for me. And I had my own father had given and instilled such a work ethic in us. My brother and sister and I, so that I wasn't the smartest guy, and I wasn't a lot of things, but I knew that no one would just be able to outwork me, and that's what that job that job entailed. And Wick Outdoor Works was my life, for a lot of years. And I would say the most fun that I had out there, I was there close to 10 years.
Okay.
I mean, the most fun were those first few years when John traveled to all the shows with me, kind of training what to say, how to say it, and just a lot of fond memories of, I look back now, I wasn't a kid, but I was, a young man, and just coon hunting had always been the biggest driver in my life. And to sit there with this guy, it was surreal, and just ask him question after question on dog training, dog breeding, on different things. And he always just had the most humble responses. And
I got that too from John when I would talk to him, always very, very gracious. And I mentioned something on social media the other day, and after I printed it, I said, well, probably I shouldn't have printed that because it sounds self-serving. But I left it because, to me, it illustrated the impact that John had on so many people's lives. He wrote, I think, when he signed my copy of his first book, and he said to a man that everybody likes, and I said, man, this coming from John Wick is saying this to me, and I'm sure I'm not naive enough to think that everybody likes me. My wife she likes me most days, but there are some, I'm sure. But no, that's just the way that he was. And one thing I wanted to mention real quick, and you can elaborate on this, Mark, going to the big events, and setting up and having my books or magazines, Cooners, whatever. Invariably, here comes, have you seen John Wick? Where's John Wick? Where's he set up? Always down at the Garmin booth, down on the corner there, if it's Autumn Oaks or Grand America or whatever. I mean, and even so many times in the last couple of years, especially since these podcasts have come along, is why don't you have a podcast with John Wick? Have him on. So, he had a tremendous following in this sport, didn't he?
Yes. And he's been in poor health for several years now. And I mean, I think to the folks that knew that and the folks that loved him, I think we're all happy that the pain is his pain, that he's out of the pain that he'd been in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think, John's big deal, what he'd always say to me was, they're just dogs. They can't really help how they act, but you are in charge of what you say and how you act. And when you're on the road, somebody is always watching you. So don't embarrass yourself and don't embarrass everyone back at the company that you represent. And, and although coon hunting was a huge part of his life, he loved horses and mules and cattle and always had several of them. And he was fond of solitude and always reading, always learning. So he went to many seminars of famous bird dog trainers and beagle events and other well-known outdoor writers, and was always asking questions of those different types of dogs. Well, why do you do it that way? What do you know about this? And I think that was part of his greatness. And I think he was very misunderstood in some ways, in that, sometimes you read these things and you think, well, this guy's got to be an outgoing guy. He was not. He was an introvert, and he had no ego, and ego is what crushes people, and it's what this is a guy that I virtually lived with for 2 or 3 years, and then was around every day for another 6 or 7 years. And I don't think that he, I don't think I remember him swearing a handful of times in all those years. I mean, he was not what I would call a church-going man, but he had a lot of biblical principles to his life. I believe that. And was, for most of, for always a gentleman and very,
absolutely,
respectful.
Well, you mentioned, his going to seminars and so forth. I attended the sporting dog summits that Purina put on in St. Louis. And the last one that I went to that was an actual in-house type thing. They've done some virtual ones since. But John was there. Yeah. And, all of these big names in the bird dog world and the retriever world and foxhound world and all this were there. And if you didn't know who John Wick was, he was just the most humble and would ask intelligent questions for sure, but in such an humble way and almost apologetically, if you don't mind, would you explain to me why this or why that? And I'm sitting there thinking, this guy knows more people than everybody in this room combined.
You just would never know, And you just would never know.
Yeah.
And,
well, I was one of those guys that read every word he printed in, and then way back when he started doing his ads in Pennsylvania and all, and he was just always such a compelling guy, you just wanted to hear more from him, and then I think when he came out with his book, it was a self-help thing, it was intended to help people.
And I mean, one of the things that when I said that responded to an ad, and that I knew that was, I was going to end up in Montgomery City. When I was 13 years old, 12, 13, 14 years old, I would write John letters, asking for training advice. And I've still got those responses to those letters, which are in Linda's handwriting. I would.
Yeah. Well, he did cheat a little bit. He had a secretary to do those articles. Yeah. I mean, it was all him, but I mean, somebody typed them up for him. I didn't have that luxury.
All those years, he responded to thousands of letters.
Oh, no doubt.
I mean, just thousands of people, and I mean, there was nothing in that for him, really. I mean, it was building your brand, but I mean, there was nothing in that. So he was very giving, I think, of his time. And,
he was a lifelong student of hounds and coon hunting, and I'm sure bird dogs and beagles and everything, horses, cattle. He was very inquisitive, as you mentioned before, but he didn't wear that knowledge, like a robe and crown. He shared it. I had him come one time to a youth event, and I believe it was when I was with AKC, but it may have been PKC. It was in Tennessee, and he came, and his ability to communicate with those kids was really amazing. And they were just there hanging on every word, And I remember one thing that he told the kids. He said, "Don't go out there tonight and put minus points on your dog that it doesn't deserve." Yeah. And just little nuggets like that, that he shared. And I think he really liked to wear that title, Uncle John, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. And he was great. He loved helping kids. He was always concerned about kids. At Wick's, he would have troubled kids from the area would come in there to the factory once a week, and just a lot of things that you just would never suspect, or things like that you never heard about.
Sure.
And, so he was, I think he and Linda both, they were, very private people. I think if you were lucky enough to get into the man, if you were lucky enough to become his friend, you were richer for it. He enriched, a lot of lives.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, and we traveled a lot, and we spent so much time together. But I would say, it was things that I didn't. I don't want to call them superficial. Our conversations were not on a very personal level until I think maybe the last several years of his life. When I would talk to him on the phone, I would always leave him with "I love you." And,
that's great.
He was, as men, we're really uncomfortable with saying things like that, expressing ourselves, and I could tell it really shocked him. He was like, "Oh,
yeah."
Very fortunate, and that when I went out to Missouri a month ago to see him, and he was in a hospital in Columbia and wasn't doing well. We visited for an hour, and we had a great conversation, and those were my last words to him were, "I love you." So I let him know how much I appreciate him.
Yeah. Well, Mark,
everything he and Linda and Monica and the whole wow crew had done for me, and how it has enriched my life, and I'm so grateful for that.
Well, I know you are, Mark, and as I mentioned to you before we agreed to record this soon after John's passing, I wanted to be sure that, because I know that his passing has impacted you very, very personally, and I do appreciate you taking the time to share this. I too have been blessed in that way. I mean, I probably knew Fred Miller better than any coon hunter ever knew him.
Sure.
He was, a very successful businessman, and in the aerospace industry and all. And they wanted him to move back to California, and he loved Michigan and wanted to stay there. So that's when he bought UKC. But John, Fred and I, we spent a lot of time together in the motorhome, as you did with John on your trips to the events. And then he would just out of the blue, Steve, what are you doing for dinner? And Fred loved his clubs. He was a country club guy, and he had a supper club downtown called, that was an exclusive place, and one out by the airport. I mean, Fred was a socialite. That's what he did.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there was a personal side to him that, I cherish, that I got to spend that time with him. And Larry Meeks was the same way when I went to PKC. Yes. Larry and I spent a lot of hours together. I've told this. I mean, I told him one time, I was laughing. We were on a stakeout. We were trying to catch some guys that were rumored to be interfering with dogs in the woods. And we're sitting out there backed up in the woods in my wife's minivan. And I said, Larry, look at us. I said, man, I didn't know I signed up for this, But we had some great, great times, and he would come up occasionally and hunt with me. So I get it. What the whole point is. Yeah, I understand. I'm getting the feedback. Are you getting that now?
I'm good. Yeah,
okay, I'm hearing feedback on my mic, but on my phone. Hopefully we can get past that. But anyway, I said all that to say I definitely understand, the kind of relationship that you could have formed, with John over those years. Now, I want to ask you just kind of, when you went to work there, did they put you into some kind of a training program, or did John kind of put you in his back pocket and said, "Follow me around, and I'll show you what to do"? Or how did that work?
They had the store, obviously, that was in front, but those first years were. I mean, because I didn't just go to coonhound events. I didn't just, I was traveling to bird dog events, to beagle events, and I really had no idea. At the time, you're just going and going and going.
Yeah.
And but you don't realize the network that you gain from all of that, and the credibility that you. I mean, that was the last. I wasn't even old enough to think about that until I left Wick's. I lived out of my van hunting coyotes for a couple of years, and then ended up at Tritronics. I mean, I got the Tritronics gig because I looked at Wick Outdoor Works and I knew the product and knew,
Yeah.
but it was funny that, when I went in there, I knew the product and I knew all the dealers better than the people who worked there. That had been working there forever. So it just fit in. But that training, when you say the training program, no, I traveled with John a lot, and we were just gone quite a bit. I was gone a lot through that 8-year time span, but those first couple years, I was just with John, and I wanted to talk like him, act like him, move like him, and have the same mannerisms, and in many ways. In many ways, that did rub off because I would, when people years later would get to see John for the first time and they'd only known me, like, man, you. I said, I learned a lot from him. Yes, a lot of mannerisms and a lot of the way that I think about things, and
Well, to break it down a little bit, you guys are out there on the road a lot. Did you just eat greasy spoons, fast food, and all, or what was the deal? Did he like to go to the restaurant?
We did. I mean, I think people that remember me back then, I was a physical fitness.
Yeah.
So I packed. We did, but I tried to eat healthy. I got food from a lot of grocery stores and ran a lot, and I packed weights and lifted back in my room. I've never. I was always been really fortunate in that I don't have any like vices when it comes to drinking or smoking, and I never have. So I never felt like socially, where I wanted to be going out to clubs and that kind of thing at night. So
I can identify.
So those things just. It was never.
You were always up at 4:00 running from the parking lot of the motel 5 miles down the road.
By the time we met for breakfast at 6 in the morning, I ran a half a dozen miles and lifted already. So obviously you can look at me now and tell that's not my life, but. Back then, why it was. So,
Well, you guys were out virtually every weekend there, pretty much, weren't you?
Yeah, all the breed days, all the, PKC, AKC, ACHA, and those first couple of years when the ACHA World Hunt was still huge and. Big. I mean, those were fun times. The sport was, so big then, and it supported 3 magazines, and it was hard to get some of these events you would need to get hotel reservations a year in advance.
And, absolutely.
But. Those aren't the times that we live in now, but back then, certainly, all those events, and so I traveled a lot, and and then when I didn't, while the store was open on Saturdays, I don't think. I think maybe early on it was open 7 days a week. I don't remember that for sure in those early years, but it was. I tell people for probably the first 2.5 years I worked there, I would say I probably worked 10 days a week.
I can imagine
it was a lot,
that.
but I can tell you. When they offered to give me time off, I didn't want it. I mean, I was having the time of my life. I was so happy and so grateful to be there and just loved what I did and everything, going to all these all these hunts and all of the, that I'd read about, and meeting Joe House and going to this different city and that different city, where I'd read about all these big events being at. And it was just, it was just a perfect gig for me. And I think it was great for them as well.
Well, your experience and mine are very much alike. I was from over there in a small town in West Virginia and relied on the magazines, as my lifeline to the sport. We didn't have much going on in the club that I belonged to there and all. And then to later on to be able to go to Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and be able to go to Greencastle, Indiana, to be able to go to Orangeburg, South Carolina, and see all these people and then, attend all the world hunts.
And Bill Boatman was there, and Bert Pony and the Gaddens from it just the folks from Nightlight, and it was just. It was a dream come true. I know people ask me. I'll interject on this. People would always ask me if I hunted with John a lot, and I would always say no. I really didn't hunt with him a ton, and I would tell guys, and they'd look at me. I go, hunting with him is not fun. and they would look at me like, what do you mean? And I'd say, well, it's just, it's 8, 10, 12 dogs a night, and you're kicking 2 out here and driving down the road and kicking 2 or 3 out here. And they're like, what? I said, and they'd always ask, well, what is it like? I said, well, have you read his book? It's exactly like his book. Like everything that he does is exactly what it says in the books. I mean, it's no different when, he doesn't pick the 2 prettiest pups in the litter. If there's a litter of 8, when the first 7 are gone, the one that's left, that's the one that he keeps. All those things that he wrote about and never now all those years, you'd see him, he'd hunt year round, and he never killed a coon out of season. Never. I mean, those things, when season came in, why, it was for the hides and killing coons and that kind of thing, but never out of season. Never, my dog needs tuned up and I'm going to give him a couple. Never. Absolutely. He'd always say that's the single most overrated thing. And with, and people like, people saying they would just want to, like, I really enjoy just hunting one dog at a time, but a lot of people are like, well, you gotta hunt one and gotta single it out. And he always said, well, I just think that's the most, how many hunts do you go to? And
when there's only one dog in it.
And there's only one dog in the cast. Just all of these things that he would talk about in the book, it was exactly, it's just exactly how it was when you hunted with him. There was really not any secrets or anything like that.
He was a purist for sure. It was basically his doctrine was simple. You've got to hunt them. You've got to keep them in the woods. He didn't come out with a whole big laundry list of little tuning tools, If he's doing this, do that. If he's doing this, do that. I think what I got out of his writings is you got to hunt them. You got to get them out there. And then you deal, you got to be smarter than the dog, But there were little tidbits, little nuggets that he left along the way. I remember this forever. We were debating at UKC whether to go to a 2-hour hunt. We had 3-hour hunts back in those days. And I talked to John about it, and he said, well, if you're a coon hunter, you'd want them to be 4 hours instead of 3. You know, why would you want to, if you like coon hunting, why would you?
That drove him crazy.
Yeah.
Keep shutting the noses that turn them down. He'd always say it takes longer. It takes longer for the cream to rise to the top sometimes, is what he'd always say to me. And I mean, another thing with young dogs, Steve, when I tell guys that when I hunt, they go in and they spend a minute or two with a young dog petting it up, and maybe they'll shoot a coon and hang it up. And I'll always say, when Wick was hunting young dogs, I said, he might spend 20 minutes at a tree. And people would look at me. I said, sometimes longer. And he would just talk to them. And he said, I said, I'm not talking about whooping them up and hollering at him, get him and sick on him or anything. Just calmly talking and petting the dog and tapping the tree a little bit. And I mean, this is when dogs were, they might not say, they may not give 10 barks in that 20 minutes a time, but he'd always say they're thinking, you can look at him, you can see he's thinking. And I don't see any of that, but I tell people I watched it over and over and over again. And I mean, just a true dog man for sure, a true trainer that just, people would always talk about breeding and, those dogs are too tightly bred and this and that. And he never talked in an authoritative way on any of that stuff. He just said, man, if I knew what I was doing, why every one of them would be great. And so, I mean, there was just so many great things out there to learn from.
Well, there was an old saying back in the hills, still water runs deep.
There you go. Yeah.
And he wasn't noisy. He wasn't boisterous. He wasn't flamboyant. But he was the Marlboro man of coon hunting. He was the John Wayne, the Duke. Pick any moniker you want to hang on him. But he did it, I guess, like, who was it? Was it Roosevelt that said, walk softly and carry a big stick? Well, he carried a big stick for sure.
I liked, after my time at Wick Outdoor Works, and then when I was with Tritronics, and then for years with Garmin, he would come to Grand American, come to Southeastern when it was in Salisbury and was a huge and come to Autumn Oaks. And I enjoyed those times very much as well, because especially like those early years when he would come to Grand American with us, and he would just be selling books, and there might be a line of 80 people, waiting to buy his book. And I think we were talking about the books earlier, and about you see so many of these people who are writers and who write books. John published his own books.
Mm-hmm.
They were self-published, and he sold them, and he outsold everybody.
Oh, no doubt.
But he always said, well, it takes so much work to do. Why would you just give that to somebody else? Why would you just have some book company that doesn't know anything? Why would you give that to them? Why didn't
I get that. I get it totally. 100%. And I had a list of questions that I wanted to ask you, Mark, but I knew when
Sure.
we started talking that we would get into the good stuff. And did he overtly try to mentor you as a coon hunter? I mean, did he say, "Okay, Mark, I know you've got these red dogs and all this, but here's what you should be doing instead of what you're doing"?
No,
Did you
not
ever
at
get
all.
any of that?
No, he would. I mean, it was really, I would learn by osmosis through him, and it wasn't any. It was just like, hey, they're you give them X number of nights, and if they're not going to do it, you got to move on. And his deal would never fall in love with the dog. So you can buy another dog any day of the week. I tell my wife that and he said, you can go to the dog pound or go anywhere and he said, these people are the most important parts of your life, so I learned a lot just from hunting with him, especially in those early years. I didn't, later on, because man, it was a job, and I had a job. I mean, I obviously was working a lot, and I was around him a lot. So he had Richard Wilson that he hunted with during the season, and I hunted with him a little bit, but and he would, he loved to ride mules back then, and there were guys that would always come in with mules. And back then, that was the joke where I never rode the mules. I always, when the mules ran, I ran. When the mules walked, I walked. But I'm like, man, I'm not doing that.
I get that totally, and I guess we could interject this right here. It's kind of a rabbit path, but my buddies down in Mississippi, Morris Hardy and Randy Smith, I call him the Mississippi Randy Smith. He's a black and tan guy. Do you know those guys at all, Mark?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, they got into a real rodeo here last week involving coon hunting off of a mule and horse.
Yeah, there you go.
And it turned into a real Western. I mean, and also, I mean, those mules will hurt you.
Hey,
but in your case, you'd have to have one about 18 hands with you.
Yeah, I grew up around them, and I rode them a lot as a kid. Horses, but I learned this also is you might think that they really like you, and when you're petting them and they're scratching their head, but really down deep they're evil, and they want to hurt you. Yeah, they really do want to hurt you, I guess, and that happened to me a time or two, and I thought, I'm just not doing this anymore.
Yeah, but things that I just remember about John, and I followed his career or his story, his journey, I guess is the word we like to use nowadays, but he loved hot dogs.
Yeah.
How many times did I read something he wrote, and he was talking about taking some weenies? He said he called them weenies, I think.
Yeah. He was big on starting a fire out there at some point during the night.
Yeah,
getting that going. And I don't do the fire thing, but I do. I usually always pack a grill with me, and at some point during the night, cook hot dogs and or cook hamburgers out there. And I mean that's always a special part of the night. And John didn't do much of that when he was training tons of dogs or getting dogs ready for hunts. I don't think people realize what a dog man he was. And I remember, the first year I was at Wick's, he had, 3 of the top 10 dogs in the pro hunts were owned by him, and of course that takes a lot of work
Oh yeah.
getting those dogs ready and keeping them sharp. But he, there again, he did that a lot when he had people out, or he'd take kids along quite a bit, and always did that.
Yeah, that was a part of hunting for my dad and me, and some of our friends back in West Virginia. We'd do that because when we went into the mountains coon hunting, you didn't just run out there and make a drop and head back home. It was pretty much an all night deal.
Yeah.
And but I always enjoyed that aspect of reading about John's hunts and his bonfires and or cook fires and whatnot. Just the down to earth guy, really. That was just unselfish. I think if I had to hang one word on John Wick as I knew him, and I certainly didn't know him as well as you did, was that he was a very unselfish man that was always willing to share and do it in an humble way, not in a way of holier than thou. Is that pretty good description?
Yeah. And I think, his legacy, I think will be that I know that he made me a better man, and I think that he made the people around him better people. And I know my last visit with him, my last conversation with him, we had more personal conversation in that hour than we'd had in the 35 years that I'd known him. And some of the mistakes that he had made in his life. And in the end, Linda was back in his life, and he expressed to me how happy he was about that.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And
that's wonderful.
And I told him that, and I said, all of us make some extremely stupid choices and mistakes in life, and I very much know that he believed that when I was talking to him.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, his passing, no doubt, has impacted so many people. I read a lot of comments, on social media and his passing, and they were all positive. There was nothing negative said at all.
It was very nice to see some of the things that folks had to say, most people they just don't say anything. Or they say something negative. And I thought, I don't know how anybody could come up with something negative to say on this guy.
Yeah, exactly.
For as much as he gave all of us in the sport.
And this is a big question, and I'm not sure I would know the answer to it and all, but just we're talking here and we all have our opinions. What do you think his biggest impact on coon hunting was? Was it the fact that he was such an innovator, an entrepreneur? I mentioned earlier, anywhere you go, you see that sea of brown nylon hunting coats and bibs, and we don't go to the woods anymore unless we're wearing a pair of what he called frog legs. He's the guy that brought all that stuff. I still have
they laughed at him. Yeah, they laughed at him. I mean, the first thing that I bought, I still have my first pair of Wick nylon slip-on chaps I bought for $16 back in 19. I got them hanging out there in the shop. They got holes in them from getting them caught in barbed wire and different things, and I never had them fixed when I was working out there. I just, but yeah, I think that I mean, that whole legacy of nylon, and I know that he told me that folks laughed at him, and I think part of all that legacy is not just John. It's John and Linda, and Monica, and John and Linda, and the wonderful folks that worked at Wick Outdoor Works, and there was a lot of them, a lot of great people that work there and help make those products and help with the
Who was
innovation of
the
those
guy
products.
excuse me, but who was the guy that worked in the office there, answered the phones some and all?
Big Butch.
Butch, yeah, great guy.
Yeah. But Ron and Billy and Danny and, I mean, gosh.
Yeah. Well, I was
really.
really.
There's just tons of great folks.
Yeah. Well, I was fortunate, when John hosted the World Hunt out there.
Yep.
Were you still with him at that point?
Oh, yeah.
That was in the 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah, I want to say that was 89. That was, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Doug Crawley has been by the booth the last couple of autumn oaks. In fact, I had him on a podcast. He won that hunt with the Louise female.
Louise,
First female to win the UKC World Hunt.
Yeah.
And so we had a lot of great times remembering that. But that's when I got to see Wick Outdoor Works and go through and get a tour, of
it's an impressive
factory
place.
in a very impressive place.
Yeah.
And to think, I guess, that Linda started sewing those in their bedroom, sewing clothes back.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm.
And then I think Rita Oliver was the first employee they had, and I know that.
That's interesting.
Rita,
my wife's maiden name is Oliver.
Okay. And I know a lot of those folks that were at Wick's were all in to see John in the last week or so of his life.
That's wonderful.
So, I mean, so he just a tremendous impact on people's lives.
Sure. Yeah. Well, he was certainly known to be an entrepreneur, and his business was very successful, obviously. A lot of people ask, wonder why didn't Linda continue that on after John left? And that's none of my business but people
it's just
really
so much work.
Yeah.
People don't realize, you got 30, 40 people working for you. I mean, and you're working, 28 hours a day for 30 years. I mean, just at some point, I mean, I think they were, they were both successful. Linda had, at that point, I had a great visit with Linda, before that had happened. And, when I left Wick's, I was gone a couple of years, and I went back, and there was talk. I going to work for PKC. There was talk of, and I had talked to Linda about John and Linda about coming back there possibly, but in the end, I mean, Tritronics it was a perfect deal for me. It just made so much sense, and it was it's funny, God's plan and how He looks out for you at times, but at that, when at some point along the way, Linda had asked me if I wanted to come back and would be interested in coming back, but I had just gotten engaged at that time, and I really liked the West and being out in the big country, and and I just felt like at that time I just didn't. Yeah, I didn't feel like that was the right move for me at that point.
Well, I understand that, and I won't share the story now, but I had a similar experience too, not with Wick, of course, but I have a 15-minute recorded interview thanks to my friend Brian Oglesby out in Missouri, who a few years ago went around the country and videotaped all the better-known Walker stud dogs of the day, back in 2004, I believe it
Did
was.
a wonderful job. Yeah, you said a few years ago. I thought, Steve, that's
21 years ago.
21 years ago already. It seems like a couple of years.
It's all just yesterday to me,
yeah,
Mark.
Yeah.
But he called it Tomorrow's Legends of Tree and Walker Coonhounds, and he would go about and he would let you give your little spiel about your dog, and they do put up the pedigree and all, and some nice still pictures, and then go out to the woods and let you see the dog tree. And it was very effective. I enjoyed them very much. But anyway, I contacted Brian, and he had given me permission to use those series of tapes. And as part of that, there is a 15-minute interview with John at the store in Montgomery City. Maybe you were there when that interview was, or when
I was
they were
not.
doing
No,
it. You weren't?
Yeah, no.
Okay. Well, at any rate, it's good, and I'm going to play it as part of this podcast. And I think I had originally thought maybe I might play it at the beginning, but the way this is working out, I think I'm going to save it for the end. But as we were talking about your Tritronics career, and then of course, you're with Garmin now, I believe, right?
Yes, sir.
And but you also have a little side gig there with MarkZepp.com and Zepp Predator calls and all. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. What's going on with all that?
It's great. It's a small business that my wife and I run it, and I think it keeps me relative in the sport. And since I was a kid, really coon hunting has blessed me. Everything that I have is due to the sport of coon hunting. So I like to think that I don't know, I had a positive influence on the sport. And when I had left Wick and I'd been out west, and I always loved calls. My grandfather got me a crow call as a kid, and I blew one a couple of times, and some crows flew over, and I thought, man, this is something.
Now I'm going to stop you right here just a second. Yep. Now, you grew up on a farm in Ohio.
Yes.
Right? Your father was a doctor.
Yes, my father was an ophthalmologist. Yep, and he was a great man. And my mom is still alive. I lost Pop. We lost him. He was 93, and lost him back in March.
Yeah. We discussed that earlier, and I'm so sorry. Losing parents is not easy. And our good friend Randy Smith, lost his mother here just within the last week or so, and it's the cycle of life. But it's certainly not easy. But your background, you basically were a farm kid, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There's 40 acres of it selling tonight in an hour, and I wish I had the money to spring for it. 40 acres now back there costs $500,000. It's crazy. And I grew up on a 1,000-acre place back in Warsaw, Ohio, Coshocton County, God's country, and I try to get back there once a year or so, if possible. I got my buddy Jay Dar and the Shrimpler family and several others, the Fry family, and Hell makes great people, and I miss that part of the world immensely. Yeah.
I imagine.
But so I grew up back there, and that was red fox. That was when red fox were $70-$80 a piece. You felt like, raccoons were $40, $50. You just felt like you were just the richest kid in the world, And I still, when people ask me, I think I sent you a picture at 1:30 in the morning or something last night. But
you did.
I still feel like people ask me, I said, for 10 or 15 minutes each night I'm out there, I still feel like that kid back in the hills of Ohio. following a dog and having a big time. So,
yeah.
but yeah,
And
I mean,
still with the red bones too.
Still with, yeah. I just, I don't. I've always liked red dogs, and just where the red fern grows and all that is what started all that, and I just probably should have given up on it, but I've had several good ones. I got a couple out there now. But yeah, I always liked calls, and I started when I was out in Arizona. I didn't know if I would get back to the Midwest ever or not, and I wanted to leave a mark in the sport, and I started making coon squallers and still making them and still selling a bunch of them, and we make a few clothes here now, some jackets and chaps. Don't do a whole lot in that. Just try to dabble in the calls, and the biggest part of it.
And I. My listeners know that for several weeks we ran these Wheel of Name spins weekly, and we would run a question based on that week's podcast, and correct answers would get their name on the wheel. And we would give one of the lead prize that we would give is one of your lifetime coon squallers. And
you go.
I'm holding one right here in my hand right now. I really like that kind of I don't know if you call it bronze. It's not really orange. It's between the orange, and that is awesome. And I love that thing. But your beautiful wife Amber told me, "Oh, you need one of these eagles." That was at Autumn Oaks, and she says you gotta try the eagle. So I've got that thing right here in my hands, and I'm noticing in that it's a composite material, like, isn't it?
It's a Delrin. It's somewhere in between acrylic and plastic.
Yeah, and now
so those are all.
It looks to be about maybe a half inch or a little more longer than the lifetime.
Yes,
and it's got just a single reed in it, a different reed.
It's a big plastic reed that. Sometimes the guys that hunt hard, the reeds that are in the lifetime, and in most of the coon squallers out there that we have ours. We go through a lot of reeds, so we have ours custom made. But I mean, this is a reed that'll last a guy just forever. And then we've got we had a squaller. We've had a couple different versions of the river bottom squaller, and we'll have those in another week or so. And that'll have a single plastic reed in it as well.
Okay, now I've used due to knowing the guy. I've been using Zepp squallers for quite a long time, and I've got this blue see-through plastic twin reed.
Plus points, yeah.
That's a plus points. Okay, that's a good squaller too. I like the sound of that squaller.
Yeah.
So so you and old Phil Robertson,
well, we in our predator calls, we're in Cabela's and Bass Pro for a lot of years, and we moved a lot of calls in and out of here. So,
I see that. Well, when I was talking to you, for us to get a time that would work for this podcast, you said you were like up last night building squallers. So
yes, yeah. It's and it's still fun. I enjoy it. I still enjoy tinkering and making those things and trying to come up with the next great mousetrap, and I think all of those things were, and in many ways, those have been successful, not just because they're a cool product and a quality product, but because of the time I spent with John and Linda, and getting to know so many people, and the dealer network and all, and establishing myself in that game. And again, that all goes back to not just being a kid, but my time at Wick Outdoor Works and the Wick crew.
Well, and I was going to go there in maybe a little bit different way, but as I look at anything that has the Zepp name on it, I have to be reminded that that's what people, when people saw Wick, they knew they were going to get a quality product, and they knew that John and Linda were going to stand behind it.
That's it.
They knew. I mean, and even today, if you mention it, guys will come out of the woodwork. I'm still wearing my Wick coat, man. It's a little worn. It's a little faded.
I told people then, and I tell people now, just like my grandpappy said, when you buy the best, you only cry once, That's what that stuff was, and that's what we try to live up to.
Well, I can see it carrying through, Mark, on I loved your coats. I have the one with the quilted lining for a little cooler weather, and then I have the one with the flannel lining, which happens to be my favorite. Just kind of wear it, to town, or you can wear it to the woods or whatever.
And we appreciate your support, and everybody out there, their support, over the really, not just to John and Linda and that gang, but for, over my lifetime, for sure, for me, just as I've moved from Wicks to Tritronics and to Garmin, and how lucky, how blessed, how great of a life that I've lived, and it started in Ohio and then went to Missouri, and I'm in northern Indiana now and enjoy my time up here.
Well, from all the guys that listen to this podcast, and there's a few women too, I feel comfortable in saying on their behalf, thank you for carrying on a lot of the traditions in good products and your articles that you do. I've always encouraged you to write more, and I think you should write even more than you're doing now.
Yeah, I like that. We keep losing magazines, keep dropping off, so it's hard to find. And I think I appreciate you saying that. I think, like Brian did with those videos, and I think everything that you've done with your articles over the year, and trying to just to have something that folks can look back upon and know these men and get to be reminded of these men who did so much for the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. I just interviewed. It's playing this week, an interview with Jimmy Meeks down in North Carolina.
Yes,
with the wild man, as we call him.
Absolutely.
Of course, and what a great guy he's been, and what an impact he's had on his breed of train walkers. Down through the years, and that's one of the things about the podcast that I didn't realize when I started out with these things. But we're archiving these stories. Of these
it's
people.
Wonderful.
And to be back in, if it's just the grandson, to say, because I get those little letters and texts and things from time to time. My granddad was a coon hunter. And to be able then for somebody to steer them, well, did you know, that there is a podcast out, an interview with him, and you can hear, his story. And to me, I hope that's the way it will be used. I know when
I think it's wonderful. I mean, and the impact that you've had on the sport as well, Steve.
Oh.
I don't know if people appreciate everything that you've done over the years for prize packages and all of these dog registries, and trying to make this sport prettier, to make it better.
Yeah,
to give it
guys
what
are
it
coming.
deserves.
Well, I appreciate that, and I've never been one that could take compliments very well. And I've been told by my wife, you need to just thank people and not try to make excuses. But It's been a labor of love for me too, as I know it is for you, Mark. And we talk about that, all the people that we meet. And my buddy Heath Hyatt does a podcast. Heath's from down in Virginia, and we go way back. And he's talking this week, about the hounds, yes, but the people, absolutely, yes, is what makes the sport so great. So. Big Mark Zepp, Middlebury, Indiana. Is that the address?
That's it.
That's it. Up in the Amish country, up there in northern Indiana. Not
coon
far.
Country.
Coon country, not far from where I lived in Schoolcraft, Michigan. Some of the best coon hunting in the world.
It is. That's a fact.
And I looked at that picture you sent me today, and that big old coon laying on the ground. I said, "Oh man, do I miss that?"
That was a nice coon last night.
Yeah,
big Michigan coon.
Yeah. Well, Mark, I appreciate so much you taking this time with me today, and I know the listeners have enjoyed as we remember a very, very, very special guy. Certainly a close friend to you, a friend for sure of mine down through the years that I didn't get to spend a lot of time with John Wick, but any time that I did, it was a quality experience for me. And to remember him and all that he's done for our sport, and it's just an honor for me, and to have you be part of that just makes it extra special.
I appreciate you asking, and appreciate being able to, tell a few John Wick stories and what he's meant to my life, and how what he and Linda meant to me over the years, and all the great people at Wick Outdoor Works.
Sure.
How great it's been for me.
Well, he left a legacy that will not be duplicated. It will not. It may be copied, but it will never be replicated, let's say. And again, I thank you, Mark Zepp. How do we get a hold of you? MarkZepp.com?
That's the...
And that's ZEPP for you guys that went to public school. Hey, I got to ask you, though, Wyatt, your son, basketball player, how's he doing this year?
He's doing well. He's at Huntington University in Huntington, Indiana. So he's about an hour and 20 minutes south of us. So this is his second year. He
just close enough to bring home his laundry, right?
That's it. Yeah. But that's a full-time gig. He is going to redshirt this year, so he's playing these first 6 games, and then he's gonna sit and work out and lift and shoot and all those things. But yeah, it's a big commitment, and my love for coon hunting has been like his love for basketball.
Yeah.
So, and it's been great.
We each go our own way.
That's it.
It's not. Yeah. Well, I know that he's done very well, and I know Mama.
Yeah, Amber and I are proud of him. We love that kid to death.
I know you do. It shows.
He's a great boy too.
Great.
I'll tell you. Great young man.
You give my love to your sweet wife, Amber. She's always such a joy to visit with at Autumn Oaks each year. And last year got to meet her folks, and that was a treat. And it's a big family out there, Mark, and a lot of great people. And I'm just glad to be part of it and glad to have your friendship, buddy.
That's great. Love you, Steve. And I, great talking to you as always. Okay.
All right, Mark. Well, you take care of yourself.
Yep.
And we'll be in touch.
All right. Thank you.
You bet. Folks, that's Mark Zepp. What a resume he has in the coonhound world, from Wick Outdoor Works to the Tritronics Corporation, now with Garmin, the single most influential product to ever come on the scene for a coon hunter has been the Garmin GPS units and all of that. And Mark is a big man in stature. He's a much bigger man in character. And we're just so glad to have him on the podcast this week. Folks, that's going to wrap it up for this time as we remember our departed friend, mentor, hunting buddy, whatever your experience with John Wick was. I hope you'll enjoy this next 15 minutes of an interview with Brian Oglesby taken back in 2004. Until next time, folks, this is Steve Fielder saying, if you're looking for me, it's easy. I'm gone to the dogs.
I'm John Wick from Montgomery City, Missouri. I'm very pleased and proud to be on this tape. I'm happy to do anything that will help the sport of coon hunting. I've been playing this game about 42 years now, so I've learned a few things. I love the sport. I enjoy the dogs. I like the people. It's been a very good activity for me for all these years. I got into it as a teenage boy when my math teacher invited me to go along. And I was out about 1 hour and I was hooked and I've never got over it. About a week or two after that, I got my first dog and I've never been without a dog ever since. I've had a ton of great adventures all over this country in every kind of terrain with all kinds of dogs, all kinds of folks too. And 98% of it's been pure pleasure.
Have you always just had Walker dogs?
Actually, Walkers was the last breed I tried. I had some of every other breed because the fellow that got me started, that math teacher I referred to a while ago, hated Walker dogs, actually. He thought they did nothing but run junk and wouldn't tree, and the people that I hunted with in that area kind of agreed with that. So I made a big mistake by just assuming they knew what they were talking about. But I have to say I tried some of everything, and then the first couple of Walkers I ever really hunted with were better than all the others I'd been with. And immediately I started rethinking the Holsteins are bad theory. And I guess it's fair to say I've been 90% Walkers ever since. But I haven't had some of every breed that I really liked. Over the years, I've even advertised a black and tan at stud. I had a good red tick at stud for a few years. Right now I have a leopard cur I like real well. I believe that I can like any dog that does the job. There's definitely a lot of truth to if they do it right, they're the right color.
What was your favorite dog that you ever owned?
I've had about 15 that I would consider kind of special. Probably the best all-around stomp-down coon dog in every department was a little white, ugly dog that I called Thunder. He just excelled in every single department. But he also excelled in Go Yonder, and sometimes that didn't suit me very good. But I would have to put him on the top of my list as far as ability in every department without any shortcomings at all. Except as a stud dog. That bugger did not reproduce very well, and there was nothing to do but recognize that fact, and I never did offer him as a stud dog.
You're pretty particular when it comes to keeping a dog for breeding purposes.
I think a lot of very nice dogs are enjoyable to hunt, but I've got to the point where I just assume they are not going to reproduce well enough to be promoted. I think that's true with males as well as females. I think one of the problems that I consistently see in this sport is that every time somebody has a dog that is extra nice in the woods, they immediately think they have breeding stock. That just hasn't panned out for me. Some of the best reproducers I've seen were nice, honest, sensible dogs, but not really exceptional. Generally, I've learned that if they are almost freakishly good, they probably are not going to be an excellent reproducer.
What do you think which direction do you think the Walker breed is headed in at this time as far as breeding for certain traits? And if you could change anything, what would it be?
I can't really change anything except what I'm doing, because it's luckily we're all in a free country. We all have different ideas, different goals. I think it all starts with that. Each of us should have a goal in mind when we're breeding, and we should strive to hit that target. There's no two of us that will totally agree on where the bullseye is. But for myself, I've always, for some strange reason, as much as I like the coon hunt, I keep ending up living where coons are kind of scarce. So I like and need a really excellent track dog. To me, that means the ability to move that track with authority and move it with real good speed. I feel like walkers 20, 25 years ago, in general, were pretty good track dogs. Many of them were excellent track dogs, but many of them were a little weak on the tree in that. And they would kind of prefer to trail a little more the tree. That has gradually evolved through breeding to where I feel we now are on the verge of the opposite problem. I still see some really good track dogs, but just about everybody knows we have a load of tree power now. I personally think we're maxing out on the treeing. I'm a fanatic about if they tree and I walk in that tree, I want to see a raccoon in that tree. Empty trees are not fun to me. They're not okay with me. I just can't tolerate it. Maybe it's because of this gray hair, big belly, and wore out knees from walking the trees, but I want a coon there. So that's a major thing to me. I want a dog that trees at the end of the track, not the middle of the track. And I really see in the Walker breed where we're in danger of that becoming a problem. Many dogs that we're reading and hearing about now don't always get to the end of that track before they tree. And some folks call that a tree dog, but I call it a lion bugger, and that's not my style. There are a lot of people who like that type of dog, though, and if that's what they want to breed for, I think that's great. Have at it. For me, I'm going to stay with more of an honest dog that works that track with authority and then finds the right tree and stays there. I get a lot of calls. I visit with a lot of people, and I can tell you there's a lot more people like me that want and demand that in their dogs, too.
You wrote the book, Walk with Wick, approximately 25 years ago. Okay. What can you tell us about how that all came about?
With a little bit of help from my old math teacher, I got started in this game, and from then on, I wanted to learn more, and I found almost no help to teach me all the ins and outs of the sport. So I learned and learned and learned, most of it the hard way and expensive way, and I had a real hard time getting the people that really knew what makes this sport tick and how to get the best from our dogs to help me. They just didn't seem to have time. The fellows that would talk to me all day tended to not have the dogs that would have suited me, so I was a little reluctant to listen to what they had to say. After I thought I had a lot of this sport figured out and thought I had some advice to offer, I worked a few years and put a book together, Walk with Wick. That was 20, 25 years ago. it sold quite well. I always guaranteed it, and I never got one back ever. But like everything I do, 5, 10 years later, I wasn't satisfied with it, and I knew I could do better. That's just the way I am with everything I do. I can be happy for a while, and then I think, golly, I could do better. So I didn't sell any of them for about 10 years. And then this past 2 years, I completely rewrote it and came out with a new version of it a couple months ago. And for now, I'm quite pleased with it. And getting real good reviews, real good comments. So I now also spending a lot of my free time working on a volume 2 of this, so that I can go into everything a little bit deeper in the next volume than I did this time. But this one's pretty deep, and I sure try to share what I know.
Is there any advice that you might give someone that's just getting into the sport of coon hunting that might help them ease into this a little better?
My best advice would be to always remember that success happens when preparation meets opportunity. I'm not a very educated person, but I have worked hard and continue to work hard to learn more about dogs. I've read every dog book I could ever get. I went to bird dog seminars, stock dog seminars, and I don't have any of those kind of dogs. I think that many kinds of dog sporting groups are trying harder to get the best from their dogs than we houndsmen are. So I've always tried to learn from them. And I think that's one thing people need to do. They need to listen to anybody that'll talk to them. They need to ask questions from anybody that they think could help them. But then, and they need to read, they need to watch videos, they need to get more knowledge everywhere they can, and then they need to think for themselves. Whether I say it, or the next guy says it, or someone else says it, it may or may not work for you, but you should still consider what they have to say. Most of my success has come from studying and then thinking for myself. So I've come up with some different ways of doing things. Some of them are even controversial. But as time is going on, more and more of my ideas are being picked up and used by other people with good luck. I would say getting all the knowledge you can get from every source and then stew on it, try it. Don't just assume that anybody has an idea that should be set in stone in your mind. Just think for yourself, but keep trying to learn.
Is there one specific piece of advice or one lesson that you've learned that's probably could more influence us more than any of the others?
You folks are probably all assuming I'm going to give you some dog advice now, but I'm not. I'm going to say that the number one lesson I've learned is to always remember that the people are more important than the dog. This is a dog video. We're all in this game because of the dogs. The dogs are a wonderful part of it, but I keep running into people and seeing it happen over and over where people forget that the people are of more importance than the dogs. You might notice that I haven't mentioned my dogs at all in this little piece, because even though I've had some and still do that I enjoy, my friends, hunting buddies, the kids that I mentor are much more important to me than my dogs. And I think everybody should remember that with their hunting buddies, with any way that they're pursuing this sport. Remember to appreciate the good people in your life.
Very well said. Well, John, you've been a front runner in the development and production of supplies for the hounds and hound hunter to make life easier for us and hunting a lot more pleasurable. And we thank you.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed doing it, and I have to to admit I did it in the beginning just to make myself more comfortable. Didn't even intend for it to become a business, but it gradually did.